Hello, hello. Happy Monday. Happy Monday for everyone who didn't get knocked out of Circa this week on Arizona, Rams, Buffalo, maybe Philly. Tough weekend, but exciting, right? Shook up everything. So I know it's Monday and the week's not over yet, but I wanted to get an early look at things in Atlas, just show any Atlas users out there how I'm using it, what I'm thinking about. Um, my personal entries are all dead, but for those who've been following, my family plays every year. We still got entries. I'm still very, very pumped up about trying to scoop this 18 million. But there's no more go Gabe to kick around. Um, you can see almost 8,000 entries got knocked out. Crazy, right? Also interesting is how, last week there was like 3 entries per person, something like that. Right now it's less than 2. So everyone's portfolio got more concentrated on whatever survives. Makes the decision process like it's the first big step up all season, right? You've been staring, you've been trying to put stuff together, and now it's like, oh shoot, really got to get each one of these choices right. The type of mindset that had people last week willing to take a shot on the Giants as a dog and Survivor, there's going to be less of that this week because the people have felt the fire intensely, right? Not just a little bit. So let's just poke around, see what people are doing. One thing you can do on Mondays, looking at all the teams, you can peek ahead to what the availability is going to be for week 6. So, like it's Monday, so Atlas isn't set to week 6 yet, but you can go in here, week 6, and let's sort by availability. And we can see that there's a handful of teams, Arizona, Buffalo, Indy, Seattle, Denver, who have all been used by most of the field now. Detroit's pretty close. Not quite half the field has used them. But everyone else, most of the field has used them. That means if you can find a way to use one of these teams, it might be like a valuable spot, right? Since it's like guaranteed it can't be a crowd. The Denver has this big game this week. That's going to be tempting a lot of people. Let's just sort by the biggest favorites. So right now, again, this is Monday. We know last week we had like 3 plot twists on the odds from Monday to Thursday. So, it's not like this is the truth, but it seems like the best, it's pretty close to reality right now. These lines are real. We can click on this and see, okay, 21 minutes ago, that was a real line. Okay, checks out. One thing to think about, all the power ratings updated. This is, the power rating is from market lines. It's not trying to use any ball reads or any special models. It's just trying to look at what the market is pricing different teams at and say, okay, this is what the market says the power is. So Green Bay didn't even have a game, and now they're number 1 in power rating. And they get to play Cincinnati, who's one of the worst. So that's going to be like the first spot everyone's thinking about this week. Should you take the massive favorite? Just to kind of go through these quickly, we see Indy, Rams, Denver all kind of near the top. Of course, the teams at the top, Green Bay, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Detroit, KC. Everyone kind of thought they'd be good, right? But this next tier is interesting. Seattle, Tampa Bay, kind of upper mid. And of course, we go to the bottom just to scope out the worst. Tennessee, yep, makes sense. Carolina, Cincinnati. Yeah, so these are the teams we're going to be targeting, right? Interesting. So, okay, let's sort by win percentage and just think about like what the field's doing here. So we have this huge win percentage, Green Bay, minus 14.5. That looks so appealing on the week where, what was it, 80% of the field got knocked out. To just come back and hit Green Bay minus 14.5 for Cincinnati. Oof. And the entire field just about has them available at 99.5%. Basically, the entire field is thinking this week, should I just flick it on Green Bay? Because I don't want to bust out like those Rams people, those Arizona people, being on a popular team getting knocked out. So that's the first big decision. Everyone has this decision, which makes it, last week's decisions, I feel like there was different segments of the field who was considering different things, but this is in front of everyone's face right now. Do you want Green Bay? And if you're trying to save them, because, they play Carolina in a few weeks, we'll map that in a second, but trying to save them, these other options, you got to burn another good team, right? We know Philly's got a nice future. Denver's a nice future. Rams, they got a couple spots, big favorites. And if you don't want to burn one of those teams, you're jumping way down here to Vegas, Pitt. Ugh. See, the Raiders are only minus 4.5. Looking ahead at that line, it seemed like it might be 6.5, maybe 7. But Raiders got whooped. Tennessee found the way to get the win. Still haven't really figured that out. But, coming into the week, it seemed like Vegas might be a hot team in Circa because it's like no future value, but big win percentage. People seem to like that. But it's not that much of a favorite, right? Maybe that changes. Maybe people get pulled into Pittsburgh against Cleveland. Funny how Vegas 4.5, but they're higher win percentage than Pittsburgh. But these are the lines that we just pulled, so I guess it's right. 238, yeah. Okay, let's go to the map. One thing, thinking about last week, is the Rams came number 1 in Circa, right? We didn't think that was going to happen. We thought they would be number 2. And, every week we think about what the normal pools are doing, what regular pools are doing, and then how does the Circa pool twist from that. And although the Rams, it made sense to pick them and all that, big favorite, Thursday night. I thought there would be less than what was picked because of their future value. If you go to where are the Rams at on this thing? They're like, what they got? Week 9, week 13, New Orleans, Carolina. Not to mention ATL, Arizona later on the season, maybe Jacksonville next week. I just thought the Rams people would be like, oh, I'm saving them for those easy spots. But sure enough, a lot of people picked them, and now they're out. And we see they're playing Baltimore this week. That seems like maybe a good little bounce back spot. For Green Bay, though, what do we do about them this week? We know they got the future. Look at all these. One thing, we see Baltimore -8 later in the year. That's the weirdest one on the map right now. Baltimore, what are they worth? And I don't really have a good answer. They look bad. All the plays where Lamar hasn't been there. Of course, he's come back at some point. People coming back, the rest of the team gets less hurt, but I don't know. Just that's the one you're most likely to see a weird kind of future projection, Baltimore teams. But on the left side of the map right here, these are all markets that we've seen recently. So we know like this Rams -7.5 at Baltimore. We know that's a real line. We can double click that and it'll load up and say, yep, that's a real line from 27 minutes ago. And then this stuff you can just kind of ignore because it's, when we have the odds, the projected spread stuff doesn't matter so much. Anyway, if you use Green Bay, which is so tempting to everyone, right? And it might not fit on every entry, even if you have Green Bay available, because this week 9 spot, look at week 9. Green Bay, huge favorite against Carolina. That's when the Rams play the Saints. And then after that, well, Detroit was a big favorite, but Detroit is becoming scarce. And, man, Detroit is going to be so good if you can get them to week 12, 14, and on, right? The Christmas spot doesn't look so, or excuse me, the Thanksgiving spot for Detroit doesn't look so great right now because of how strong Green Bay appears. But that could go a lot of ways, right? So now, if you're taking Green Bay, I think it's about week 9. And, if you've used Rams in Detroit and you're going to use Green Bay on this week, you're going to be in trouble week 9. And you can always just hope one of these teams becomes a bigger favorite. You can hope that your reads are right that week when you're, trolling in the -3 bin. But I don't know, if you're in a huge pool, Circa, there's still 4,000 entries and change left, right? You're still trying to win $18 million. So do you want to survive or do you want to set yourself up to punish people later? That's always the question, right? Of course, it's sometimes you think you're just playing to survive and then you get knocked out. And those times when you get knocked out on popular teams, it really helps like remind you why the EV stuff matters. If you're on less popular stuff and the crazy Sundays happen, then your entry can just shoot up multiples. So anyway, this week, I feel like the structure of the decision's pretty laid out. It's the huge favorite against everyone else. I guess it's worth saying, like what might change. The things that can really shake things up are when one of these teams from down here, something like Pitt, Vegas, Chargers, Cowboys, Washington, Patriots. When one of those teams start getting a little momentum in the market, maybe there's some injuries out the other side. Maybe you just see the line start creeping up. Like New England at New Orleans. New England's -3.5. That's a real line you can bet. From 30 minutes ago, yeah. My gut would have said they might be higher. They might be popular in Survivor this week, just because they got a nice flashy Sunday night win. New Orleans, maybe it's a come down game after they finally got a win. I don't know, but that seems like one of the candidates for maybe catching 10% of the field on them. Denver spot is interesting. They're not so available, and they're playing the Jets, who seem the worst, right? But Denver, I've been thinking a lot about Denver and how they come into play later. They might be the first team with 0 available. I wonder if that's possible. I haven't really done math on that, just kind of throwing that out there, but it seems like Denver is like appealing a lot, right? Yeah, okay, going to come back to that. Let's look at the lobby. So we can see 7 people still got 10 entries. And then a bunch of people got a mishmash, but there's not a lot of people with a lot of entries anymore, right? It's getting tight. Oh, I wonder how many people have lots of entries. Let's look at this. So people with 10 entries. After this week, there's only 7 people with 10. Only one person with 8. Dang. Not that that really matters, but then you can see how much it goes up. So what's it like? A third of the field, a little more than a third of the field is just on one entry. So, thinking about projections, I always like looking at that kind of cohort as its own kind of interesting thing. These people though with 10, that's how nice is that? Yes, nice bloody week. All right, I got a couple or little tiny new things worth loading up. So first, I guess we'll go to my page. This is me this past week. I got tempted by Rams, a couple Arizona, one buff for the EV hedge. Nope. Anyway, this captain's log feature that we showed last week, we plan on like expanding more. We were working on some stuff where it's actually kind of fun to use when you have some entries. But now that the field's down to like 1 or 2, it's a lot different. So, when we won 2021, the name was Return of Survivor. That was my brother-in-law's. Now this year he's got Survivor Strikes Back. So I'm gonna load that one up because it's like one of the entries I'm most interested in. You can see what this captain's log is all about. Okay, so pretty much like before, right? Just you can fill in stuff you want. For example, we know week 9. I want the Green Bay on this entry and Rams on the other entry. And let's say for Thanksgiving, I just want the best teams no matter what. So we got this little robot icon. This robot icon, it's the same little robot from the map that just fills in everything automatically with 1 week at a time, the highest spread it can find, and then moves on to the next week. So that's the little autofill robot. So now if you have entries you're managing in here, maybe you want to just autofill Thanksgiving with the biggest teams you can use. Okay, that makes sense. And let's say Christmas, I'm going to go ahead and check. I don't want Washington. I want Kansas City. Okay, and then when you do a little robot, fills it in with the rest. Or fills that one in. And, whatever you do here, just auto saves. And you can do this for other players. So, later in the season, it'll be useful to perform reconnaissance, I guess, on your opponents. But for now, it's just kind of a little kind of sketch pad, a little notepad for your entries, and it's just a little minor thing to make it more useful. And I think as I use it more, I'll find more stuff like that. But at the same time, now that everyone's down to just 1 entry each, or 2 entries, 3 entries, a lot of this thinking that might happen in Captain's Log, maybe it's easier to do in the map. Especially when you only have 1 entry, you don't need to see the log with all your entries, right? So that's something. And we can always go back to this overview. This is always fun to look at. So one final thing I want to talk about is the EVs you see on the site. So, we try to save the EVs from past weeks to help us look back and like see what was like, the value like angle. And I think over the season, it's interesting to kind of collect all these and point at them and try to find angles or trends or just like learn about what kind of decisions are actually, how they affect entries, right? So the thing about EV though, there's some kind of like caveats. We can't really just say what the EV of all the picks were. There's lots of like shifty things. Try to sit up so I can get this right. For example, this week, You want to record the EVs of everything. So the win percentages. What win percentage do you do? Well, just use the market. Okay. So there was a game Thursday night, and people made a decision. That Rams play, everyone, it was like affecting almost everyone in the field, right? So everyone had the decision on Thursday night what to pick based on all the choices and their likelihoods to win, and their likelihoods to be unpopular. But then there's another, once that game happens and the field changes, then there's kind of a new decision. How does the field react to that? And, the odds change. And then there's the deadline that happens. Everyone puts their picks in. And then the odds change some more, and then the games happen. And, to finalize the EV number, where do we use the win percentage from? Is it from the Thursday decision, from the Saturday, from the Sunday? Or maybe we combine it in some smart way. Like if you were judging your own decisions, would you use the win percentage from when the deadline happened or when the game kicked off? I think it's a little different. So, I think the best answer would be to track all the different ways and try to do that. But I think that might get overwhelming, kind of confusing. So we're just doing the best we can on like publishing what the EV was, using the most reasonable guess we can come up with. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're looking through a player's EV, or maybe you're looking on the team's table, looking back in time, seeing, what was the EV of those picks? It's not as straightforward as just looking at that. Not at all. Like, for example, the Rams thing happens. Let's say a third of the field gets knocked out, and let's say, no one is on San Francisco, so everything's like open to get. You can still scoop everyone on Sunday, right? So when on Thursday, when a popular team on Thursday wins, it makes Sunday you really don't want to choose the kind of small favorites and dogs. It makes those way worse because you have no chance of like the ultimate scoop, right? Where you can knock everyone out. But when the opposite happens, when someone popular loses on Thursday night, then it's more interesting. The EV changes on those kind of unpopular teams. So, like judging people's EV, there's just a lot to it. It's not as simple as just putting a number on it. Like on this table, we try to just slap a number on it. Like this one, did the Jets really close as a favorite? Did that happen as -1.5? I didn't notice that because that's actually pretty crazy EV. That if the people backed in that 5 people on the Jets, and they were a small favorite. So hey, maybe that was a good play, or maybe that's just a wrong number we got there from looking at something. Go back and look at that. The rest of these seem pretty reasonable. Detroit being the big favorite, but people saving them, so it makes sense that they were plus EV. Same with Buffalo. Then if you go down and see like all the people picking underdogs, what they're doing to their EV. Even if you use Carolina and you save a whole spot in your entry for anyone in the future, I don't know if it's worth a -30%. Anyway, that's enough for today. Tomorrow, we're doing projections like always. And Mikey and I are hanging out for game winning drive. And come hang out with us. Come check us out. As always, we'll be doing another tailgate on Thursday. So thanks, everyone. Bye.